Few dare to tell this story. The Parthian Empire was not just a distant kingdom in the east, it was Rome's greatest enemy. For centuries, Roman legions marched to conquer lands, subjugating entire peoples, but there was one adversary they could never dominate. Who were these mysterious warriors that challenged the greatest empire of the West and humiliated its troops on the battlefield? And why has their story been almost erased from historical records? Something doesn't add up. If Rome prided itself on its victories, why was so little written about the humiliating defeats to the Parthians? Why did Roman historians downplay the threat this empire posed? What were they trying to hide? This was one of the few empires that never fell before the Roman legions, and yet, its history is shrouded in shadows. Was it merely a lapse in historical records or a conspiracy to erase the traces of a power that Rome could never subjugate? The Parthians rose from the ashes of the ancient Persian Empire and, in no time, challenged Rome's hegemony. They were not disorganized barbarians, but rather relentless strategists, masters of war and diplomacy. At Carrhae, in 53 BC, they humiliated Rome in a way that was never forgotten. They annihilated an entire army, captured its sacred insignia, and left a clear warning: Rome was not invincible. But how did a supposedly lesser people achieve such a feat? This empire did not fall to Roman might, but to something even more treacherous, a coup orchestrated by internal and external forces. But who really brought down the Parthians? Were the Sassanids alone responsible, or was there a larger conspiracy involving old allies and hidden enemies? What did Rome know about this sudden downfall? Hidden among the fragments of history, the truth about the Parthians continues to intrigue. Their military secrets, their strategies, their lasting influence, all of this has been buried over time. But now, the time has come to bring this truth to light. Who were the Parthians really? What did Rome try to hide about them? And, more importantly, why does this story remain one of the greatest mysteries of antiquity? Prepare to discover the forgotten empire that made Rome tremble. What you are about to hear may change everything you know about power and war in the ancient world. Before we begin exploring the next topic, take a moment to check if you are subscribed to the channel, because what comes next is a series of amazing videos that will help you better understand the history of Rome and how it can inspire your personal journey. Don't miss any content. Imagine a forgotten empire, one that challenged Rome, controlled the Silk Road, and held secrets that could change the course of history. Who were the Parthians, really? And why does their story seem so mysteriously erased from Western records? The saga of the Parthian Empire is not just a tale of kings and battles. It is a narrative of resistance, betrayal, and hidden secrets that continue to intrigue historians today. Their domain stretched across what we now know as Iran and Turkmenistan. Unlike centralized empires like Rome and Han China, the Parthians adopted a decentralized system, allowing local nobles to maintain autonomy. Was this a sign of genius or the cause of their downfall? In the 6th century BC, Parthia was under Persian rule, but Alexander the Great swept this empire off the map in 330 BC, bringing with him Hellenistic influence. With his death, the generals who inherited his empire tried to impose Greek culture by force. An enigmatic warrior, Arsacid I, of Scythian origin, decided that the Parthians would not be enslaved by a foreign culture. What he did next would change the history of the region forever. Upon taking control of Parthia in 247 BC, Arsacid laid the foundations of an empire that would endure for centuries, blending Greek and Persian influences into a model of decentralized power. How did a nomadic people manage to maintain an empire that challenged Rome? The answer lies in a military secret that terrified their enemies, the Parthian shot tactic. Their mounted archers would feign a retreat and, at the last moment, turn around and shoot arrows with deadly accuracy, annihilating entire legions. What did Rome learn from this humiliating defeat? The Battle of Carrhae in 53 BC was one of the most shameful moments in Roman history. General Crassus, one of the richest men in Rome, led an army of 40,000 soldiers against the Parthians, but was decimated. The Parthians, with their smaller and more agile army, used their devastating tactics to crush Roman arrogance. But what few know is that after the battle, thousands of Roman soldiers simply disappeared. Reports suggest they were captured and taken to a distant land, but where? The Parthians controlled the Silk Road, the connection between East and West, enriching themselves through the trade of silk, spices, and precious stones. This commercial monopoly also made them targets of conspiracies and betrayals. Ancient documents suggest that confidential information about Parthian wealth reached Rome through infiltrated spies. Could this be the reason why the Romans attempted, for centuries, to destroy the Parthian Empire? However, as much as the Parthians resisted Rome, their true enemy was closer than they imagined. In the 3rd century AD, a new force emerged in southern Iran, the Sassanids. A brutal war began, and in 224 AD, the last Parthian king, Artabanus IV, was defeated. Was his fall accidental or part of a much larger plan? Many believe that the history of the Parthians was deliberately erased, as they represented a threat to the centralized power model that dominated the ancient world. They proved that an empire could thrive without an oppressive central government, something that Rome and other empires could never allow. What if there are secrets about the Parthians that have never been revealed? What if the truth about their disappearance is hidden in ancient manuscripts, far from the public eye? The story of the Parthian Empire is more than just a simple narrative of kings and battles. It is a riddle that challenges everything we know about the past. What really happened to the missing Roman soldiers? What was the true military secret that Rome could never replicate? Was the fall of the Parthians merely a defeat or the result of a dark plan that we still do not understand? If you want to understand the truth about this forgotten empire, prepare for a journey into the past that may change your view of history. The rise of Arsacid was not a random event. For a tribal leader to defeat the Seleucids, one of the greatest Hellenistic empires, he would need more than just courage. Did he receive secret support from internal factions within the Seleucid Empire itself? Many cities in Central Asia were dissatisfied with Greek dominance, and there are indications that Arsacid may have counted on unexpected allies, including Persian merchants and nobles who wanted to rid themselves of Hellenistic influence. The speed with which Arsacid took Parthia is one of the greatest mysteries of this story. He was neither a powerful king nor did he command a large army, yet he managed to capture the region and withstand Seleucid retaliation attempts. Some theories suggest that the Seleucids, weakened by wars on other fronts, simply neglected the threat, while others point to the possibility of betrayal within the Greek ranks. Did discontented Seleucid generals secretly assist Arsacid? Another intriguing factor is how Arsacid quickly consolidated his rule. After taking Parthia, he did not face major internal rebellions. This suggests that his rise to power was seen as a liberation by the local inhabitants. The Persians in the region still held memories of the ancient Achaemenid Empire and viewed the Greeks as foreign invaders. Did Arsacid present himself as a legitimate heir to the Persian tradition to secure the support of the populace? Arsacid's military strategy is also an enigma. Parthia was a mountainous region and difficult to conquer, but he employed tactics that allowed him to resist Seleucid counterattacks. The famous Parthian cavalry, which would later defeat the Romans, was already a feared force at that time. But where did these warriors come from? There are indications that Arsacid recruited experienced soldiers from Scythian and Bactrian tribes. Beyond military strength, the economic question also raises doubts. An empire cannot be sustained without resources, and the Parthians did not have an established tax system when Arsacid came to power. How did he finance his revolt? Some historians believe that Arsacid may have allied with powerful merchants who saw in the new government a chance to expand their trade routes. Another mysterious point is the absence of details about Arsacid's life before his rebellion. Historical records are vague, and even his exact origin is uncertain. Some say he was a tribal chief of the Dahian Confederation, while others suggest he had connections with ancient Persian noble families. If this second hypothesis is true, his revolt may not have been a simple tribal uprising. The Seleucids attempted to retake Parthia, but failed. General Seleucus II launched a campaign to crush Arsacid, but could not reverse the situation. How did a small newly formed kingdom manage to withstand the attack of a well-established empire? Arsacid may have used guerrilla tactics and knowledge of the terrain to his advantage. There are speculations that his resistance was bolstered by external allies, possibly other Iranian peoples or even Seleucid dissidents. Another curious aspect of Arsacid's rise was his ability to unify different groups under his command. Parthia was a land of cultural diversity, and any ruler would have difficulty maintaining order among nomadic tribes, Persian cities, and Greek colonies. However, Arsacid managed to stabilize his government quickly. How did he deal with these cultural differences? Did he adopt a policy of religious and administrative tolerance that would later become a hallmark of the Parthian Empire? The use of symbols was crucial to legitimize Arsacid's power. After his victory, he adopted Persian royal titles and even minted coins with his image, something that only kings did at the time. But who advised him to do this? For a tribal leader, this political and symbolic knowledge suggests that he may have been guided by experienced advisors, possibly former Persian nobles or even Zoroastrian priests who saw in him a liberator against Greek influence. The foundation of the Parthian Empire also had a significant geopolitical impact. Until then, the Seleucids were considered the legitimate successors of Alexander's empire, but the rise of the Parthians changed that balance. With Parthia under control, Arsacid created a new center of power in the east, challenging Greek dominance in the region. Was this merely a byproduct of his revolt, or did he already plan to transform his small kingdom into a great empire? Another essential factor for Arsacid's success was the alliance with other Iranian tribes. He could not have defeated the Seleucids alone, so how did he manage to gather support among groups that traditionally faced each other? There are indications that he used promises of land and titles to attract warriors from different ethnicities. If this is true, he demonstrated a rare political skill for a tribal leader, reinforcing the theory that his revolt was not spontaneous but rather carefully planned. The consolidation of the Parthian Empire was too rapid to be merely a product of chance. Arsacid adopted a governmental system that combined Persian and Greek elements, allowing his administration to function without major abrupt changes. This balance between tradition and innovation was one of the keys to its longevity. But was he the true strategist behind this model, or were there hidden advisors who helped him structure the new empire? Another point of mystery is how Arsacid disappeared from history. Records about his end are scarce, and there is no consensus on how and when he died. Some believe he ruled for many years before being succeeded by his brother or son, while others suggest he may have been eliminated by internal rivals. If he truly had enemies within his own circle, this would indicate that his rise was not as unified as it seems. The most intriguing aspect is that, even after his death, the title Arsacid continued to be used by his successors, becoming a dynastic name. This indicates that his legacy was more than just military, he became a symbol of resistance and sovereignty. But was this title maintained to conceal secrets about Arsacid's true identity and plans? To this day, his rise remains shrouded in mystery, and the truth about the conspiracy that brought him to power may be hidden in lost documents and forgotten ruins. If you want to discover more about this lost secret of history, stay with me. The past hides truths that can change the way we see the world. Are you ready to unravel this enigma? Mithridates I was not an ordinary king. He not only expanded the Parthian Empire, but seemed to follow a very well-architected plan. Instead of simply defending his lands against the Seleucids, he took the offensive, conquering strategic territories. But why would a leader who already ruled a prosperous region risk so much? Did he have knowledge of something that others ignored? Mesopotamia, one of the richest and oldest regions in the world, has always been a target of dispute among empires. But for the Parthians, there seemed to be an even deeper reason for this conquest. Mesopotamia was not just a fertile territory. It was the cradle of civilizations, home to ancestral temples and lost knowledge. Did the Parthians know this? Was there some hidden secret among the ruins of Babylon, something they wanted to protect or control? Some theories suggest that the Zoroastrian priests, who had great influence among the Parthians, believed that the region held remnants of ancient wisdom, perhaps even predating the Achaemenid Empire. If this is true, Mithridates' expansion may have had a purpose beyond mere territorial ambition. The rapid advance of the Parthians also raises questions. They not only defeated the Seleucids but managed to establish themselves without major revolts. How did a nomadic people consolidate such vast dominion in such a short time? Some historians believe that the Parthians had secret allies within the cities they conquered. Persian nobles, dissatisfied with the Greek culture imposed by the Seleucids, may have collaborated with Mithridates in exchange for the restoration of ancient traditions. If this is true, this secret alliance would have been one of the greatest blows against the Hellenistic world. The Parthians' relationship with Persian culture is also a point of interest. Unlike other conquerors, they did not destroy local traditions but incorporated them. The ancient Zoroastrian rituals regained strength under Mithridates, suggesting that his expansion was not only military but also ideological. The Parthian king wanted more than land, he wanted to restore the essence of what he saw as the true Persian identity. But why was this so important? Was he merely using this idea to unify his people, or was there something deeper at play? The expansion into Mesopotamia also put the Parthians on a collision course with Rome. It was inevitable that by conquering one of the most strategic regions in the world, Mithridates would attract the attention of the Romans. But did he already know this and was preparing for confrontation? The evidence suggests so. The Parthians not only strengthened their defenses but developed a specific military tactic to face the Romans, the famous Parthian cavalry's hit-and-run strategy. Did Mithridates foresee that Rome would be his greatest enemy even before the first conflict occurred? Another intriguing question is how the Parthians managed their vast empire. Unlike Rome, which imposed a centralized government, the Parthians adopted a decentralized system, allowing local governors to maintain significant autonomy. This may have been a strategic decision, enabling different cultures within the empire to feel represented. But how did they manage to prevent this from leading to the fragmentation of the empire? Was there a secret network of information and espionage ensuring that all provinces remained loyal to the Parthian king? The Parthian advance may also have been facilitated by betrayals within the Seleucid Empire. Already weakened by internal disputes and wars against other rivals, the Seleucids lost territory without offering much resistance. But why were their defenses so disorganized? Did Mithridates know of these internal divisions and seize the right moment to attack? If he truly had informants within the enemy empire, it would indicate a level of planning far more sophisticated than previously imagined. The economy of the Parthian Empire also played a crucial role in this expansion. Unlike the Romans, who relied on taxes and war plunder, the Parthians controlled valuable trade routes, including the Silk Road. This means that Mithridates was not only conquering territories but also dominating the flows of wealth that passed through them. What many do not realize is that the Parthians did not need to defeat Rome militarily to destabilize it, they only needed to cut off its access to essential resources. Could this have been the true objective of his expansion? Another question that draws attention is how the Parthians dealt with cultural diversity within the empire. Unlike the Romans, who often imposed their laws and customs, the Parthians allowed each people to maintain their identity. This may have been one of the reasons why they did not face as many rebellions in their conquered territories. But how did Mithridates manage to balance so many different cultures without losing control? Had he learned from the mistakes of previous empires, such as the Persians and Macedonians? Parthian diplomacy was also an essential factor in their consolidation. Mithridates not only waged war but also knew how to negotiate alliances. The Parthians often made pacts with neighboring peoples to maintain stability at the borders. But how did he choose his allies? Some theories suggest that the Parthian elite had access to privileged information about the intentions of other kingdoms, allowing them to anticipate betrayals and avoid unnecessary conflicts. Was there a Parthian espionage network operating behind the scenes of international politics? Another curious aspect is the relationship of the Parthians with the descendants of the Achaemenid Persians. Many believed that the royal lineage of the ancient Persian emperors had disappeared, but there are indications that members of this nobility survived in secret. If this is true, did Mithridates use them to legitimize his expansion? Did he claim to be the true heir to the Persian throne, using this narrative to unify different peoples under his command? The symbols used by the Parthians also suggest a connection to the Persian past. Mithridates adopted royal titles that referred to the ancient Achaemenid Empire, in addition to using coins with images similar to those of Persian kings. But was this merely a political strategy, or was there a deeper reason? Some believe that the Parthians not only wanted to recreate an empire, but also to restore forgotten knowledge and traditions of the ancient Persians. Was the Parthian expansion motivated by a quest for hidden secrets of antiquity? The stability of the Parthian Empire after Mithridates' expansion is also intriguing. Unlike other empires that grew rapidly and soon faced rebellions, the Parthians managed to maintain control of their lands for centuries. But how? Did Mithridates create a secret governance structure that ensured the loyalty of local rulers? Or was there a hidden code of administration that only the Parthian kings knew? Finally, the most intriguing question of all, did the Parthians really just want to expand their territory, or was there a greater mission behind it? Did Mithridates see his empire as just another kingdom, or did he believe he was fulfilling a predetermined destiny? The speed of his conquest, the strategic choice of Mesopotamia, and the continuity of his dynasty indicate that there was something more behind his actions. What truly motivated the Parthians? What did they know that Rome did not? The answer may be hidden in forgotten ruins, waiting to be discovered. And did you know that the Parthian Empire was Rome's greatest enemy and humiliated its legions on the battlefield? But why has this story been almost erased from the records? Have you heard of the decisive confrontation that shook Rome and could have changed its destiny forever? Now, imagine a divided, weakened Rome on the brink of collapse. What if the outcome had been different? What would have happened to the greatest empire of antiquity? Tell us in the comments if you were already aware of this epic battle and its true importance. If this topic interests you, share your opinion and spread this knowledge. We are curious to know what you think. The initial conflicts between the Parthian Empire and Rome were not merely common territorial disputes. Behind the battles, something much larger was unfolding. Two completely different empires, with opposing strategies, clashed in a struggle that would last for centuries. But what truly initiated this rivalry? Was it merely the Roman ambition to expand its borders, or had the Parthians been anticipating this confrontation and secretly preparing for it? The answer may lie in Armenia, a strategic territory that became the stage for the first disputes. Armenia has always been a crucial region for the empires of the time. Located between Rome and Parthia, it served as a buffer state, controlled now by one, now by the other. But why was this seemingly small land so coveted? The answer lies in its location and wealth. To dominate Armenia meant having access to essential trade routes and securing a privileged position for future military campaigns. Thus, Rome and Parthia waged a silent war, trying to place their own kings on the Armenian throne. Initially, the Romans underestimated the Parthians. They viewed the Parthian Empire as a disorganized eastern kingdom, lacking the discipline and structure of Rome. But this perception proved to be a fatal mistake. The Parthians had something the Romans did not expect: an unbeatable cavalry, an innovative combat strategy, and a deep knowledge of the desert routes. When the first confrontations began, Rome realized it was dealing with a far more dangerous enemy than it had imagined. The first direct disputes occurred during the rule of Pompey, who sought to expand Roman borders to the east. But the Parthians did not back down. They fiercely resisted and demonstrated that they were not an easy enemy to subjugate. For the Romans, accustomed to facing organized armies in the European manner, fighting against the Parthians was a completely new challenge. How could one defeat an army that did not hold its ground, that attacked and vanished into the desert? The Parthian strategy was unlike anything Rome had ever faced. Instead of forming large legions and engaging in frontal combat, the Parthians used mobility to their advantage. The Parthian cavalry, composed of extremely skilled mounted archers, would strike quickly and retreat before the Romans could react. This tactic, known as Parthian shot, was devastating. Would Rome be able to find an answer to this threat? Or had the Parthians discovered the weak point of the greatest empire in the West? The conflicts intensified when Crassus, one of the most powerful men in Rome, decided to confront the Parthians directly. Convinced that he could defeat them with the strength of his legions, he marched east with a gigantic army. But did Crassus truly understand what he was facing? Was he prepared for an enemy that fought so differently? The answer came brutally. The Parthians annihilated his army at the Battle of Carrhae, humiliating Rome before the world. Crassus's defeat was more than a military setback. It was a psychological shock for Rome. For the first time, its legions had been completely destroyed by an enemy they considered inferior. The eagles of the legions, sacred symbols of Roman power, were captured by the Parthians and taken as trophies. This was a deep blow to Roman morale. But what did the Parthians do with these eagles? There are theories that they were used in rituals to spiritually weaken Rome. True or not, the impact of this defeat was felt for decades. After the victory at Carrhae, the Parthians had the chance to advance and conquer Roman territories. But why didn't they? Some historians believe that the Parthians did not merely want to destroy Rome, but rather to keep it away from their domains. Instead of total war, they opted for a defensive position, ensuring that Rome would never feel secure in the east. But was this strategy truly sustainable? Or was it a mistake not to pressure Rome while it was weakened? Rome, on the other hand, did not accept defeat easily. Mark Antony, one of the most influential generals of his time, attempted to regain control of the region and restore Roman pride. He organized a grand campaign against the Parthians, convinced that he could overcome Crassus's failures. But did he really learn from the mistakes of the past? Or was Rome doomed to repeat its blunders in the war against the Parthians? The war between Rome and the Parthians was not merely a dispute over territories. It was a clash of civilizations. On one side, Rome, with its discipline, legions, and hunger for expansion. On the other, the Parthians, with their mobility, guerrilla tactics, and strategy of attrition. But which of these models was superior? Could Rome truly win a war against an enemy that refused to fight by its rules? Another crucial point of this conflict was diplomacy. The Parthians, contrary to popular belief, were not just warriors. They were also masters of the art of negotiation. At various moments, they managed to divide Roman forces, exploiting rivalries among their generals. This raises an intriguing question: did the Parthians have spies within Rome? How did they always know the best time to attack or retreat? Over the years, Rome and the Parthians continued their disputes in Armenia and other strategic regions. But neither empire could achieve a decisive victory. The balance of power remained for centuries, proving that the Parthians were one of the few enemies that Rome could never completely defeat. This brings forth an intriguing doubt: were the Parthians truly just a rival empire, or was there something about them that Rome feared more than it admitted? The war between the Parthians and the Romans shaped the geopolitics of the ancient world. Rome learned valuable military lessons, while the Parthians consolidated their reputation as an indestructible power. But this rivalry also revealed the limits of Roman expansion. For the first time, Rome encountered an enemy it could not subjugate. What did this mean for the future of the empire? The early conflicts between Rome and the Parthians were just the beginning of a struggle that would last for centuries. But the question that remains is, what if the Parthians had decided to invade Rome at the height of its power? Would the fate of the world have been different? What would have happened if the Parthians had marched on Rome in the same way the Romans dreamed of marching on Parthia? What was left out of the official history? Perhaps the true answer lies buried beneath the ruins of an empire that challenged Rome and survived to tell the tale. The Battle of Carrhae, fought in 53 BC, was not just a military defeat for Rome, it was one of the most humiliating moments in the history of the empire. Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the richest and most powerful men of his time, believed he could easily conquer Parthia. Crassus completely underestimated the military capability of the Parthians, leading his legions into a deadly trap in the heart of the desert. But was it merely arrogance, or did Crassus fall into a meticulously laid plan by the Parthians? Crassus was part of the first triumvirate, alongside Julius Caesar and Pompey, and sought a military victory to consolidate his political position. Believing that Parthia would be an easy target, he gathered 7 legions, about 40,000 soldiers, and marched eastward. However, he overlooked one essential detail: the Parthians did not fight like the enemies Rome was accustomed to facing. They had no rigid formations, did not seek frontal combat, and used the desert as a weapon. From the outset, the Roman advance was marked by mistakes. Crassus rejected advice from experienced commanders and relied on local guides who may have been spies for the Parthians. He led his army into an arid region, far from water sources. Meanwhile, the Parthians, led by General Shurina, were watching every Roman movement, waiting for the right moment to strike. Had Crassus been a victim of a trap from the very beginning? When the Romans approached Carrhae, in present-day Iraq, they were surprised by the Parthian army. But it was not an ordinary army. Instead of large infantry formations, the Parthians employed highly mobile cavalry. The Parthian cavalry was composed of mounted archers and cataphracts, heavily armored horsemen. This combination was lethal. The archers fired arrows incessantly, while the cataphracts launched devastating attacks. The Parthian strategy was brilliant. They surrounded the Roman legions and initiated an unrelenting rain of arrows. The Parthian archers had a secret: they used composite bows, much more powerful than Roman bows. Their arrows easily pierced shields and armor, and being mounted, they could shoot while moving. They employed the famous Parthian shot technique, firing arrows even while retreating. Rome, accustomed to hand-to-hand combat, was completely defenseless against this style of warfare. Crassus attempted to respond, ordering advances to break through enemy lines, but the Parthians simply withdrew and resumed their long-range attacks. The Roman soldiers began to panic. The scorching sun, thirst, and exhaustion made everything worse. Meanwhile, Shurina maintained psychological pressure on the Romans, using deafening war drums and macabre displays of the bodies of fallen legionaries. The final blow came when the Parthians captured Publius Crassus, son of Marcus Crassus. The young general had led a desperate charge against the enemy cavalry, but was surrounded and killed. The Parthians displayed his severed head on a spear to the Roman army. It was at that moment that Crassus realized his campaign was lost. His soldiers began to desert, and the morale of the legions crumbled. However, while Rome licked its wounds, the Parthian Empire began to crumble from within. Its system of government was fragile, based on the authority of a warrior nobility. But what happens when the nobles themselves start fighting for power? Palace conspiracies became common, and each new succession to the throne was contested in civil wars. The greatest enemy of the Parthians was not Rome, but themselves. During the reign of Phraates IV, instability intensified. To maintain his throne, he ordered the assassination of his brothers and persecuted the nobility that questioned his authority. But a monarchy based on fear is an unstable monarchy. many nobles fled to the Roman side, bringing valuable information about the internal weaknesses of the empire. Rome realized that it no longer needed to destroy the Parthians by force, it was enough to let them self-destruct. The Roman strategy changed. Instead of trying to conquer Parthian territories directly, they began to interfere in the internal politics of the empire. They supported claimants to the throne, encouraged betrayals, and fueled the civil wars that consumed it. In an attempt to negotiate his surrender, Crassus accepted a meeting with the Parthians. But what happened next remains shrouded in mystery. Some versions say he was betrayed and killed on the spot, while others claim that the Parthians captured him and executed him in a cruel manner. The toll of the battle was devastating for Rome. About 20,000 legionaries died, another 10,000 were captured and sent to remote regions of the Parthian Empire, and only a fraction of the army managed to escape. But the worst was yet to come. The Parthians captured the legionary eagles, the sacred standards of the Roman legions. This was a gigantic symbolic blow. The eagles represented the pride and glory of Rome, and their loss was seen as a sign of disgrace. The capture of the legionary eagles had a profound impact on Roman politics and morale. Rome could not allow these sacred symbols to remain in enemy hands. Decades later, Augustus finally negotiated their return. The shame of the defeat at Carrhae was never completely erased from Roman memory. What did the Parthians do with the eagles during this time? Some historians believe they were kept as war trophies, while others suggest they were used in rituals to curse the empire. The Battle of Carrhae also redefined the relationship between Rome and Parthia. Rome realized that the war against the Parthians would not be easy and that its legions were not invincible. Meanwhile, the Parthians consolidated their reputation as one of the few civilizations capable of challenging and humiliating Rome. But what if the Parthians had taken advantage of this victory to advance and conquer Roman territories? Would the fate of the world have been different? The episode of Carrhae revealed the weaknesses of the Roman legions against highly mobile armies. In the future, Rome would try to learn from its mistakes, adapting its tactics to face the Parthians. However, this battle remained a symbol of Roman vulnerability in the East. Could it be that this defeat influenced the decline of Rome centuries later? The name of Crassus is marked in history as one of the greatest examples of arrogance and military miscalculation. But the lingering question is, what if he had won? How would history have unfolded if Rome had conquered Parthia at that moment? Would the Roman Empire have advanced even further east, perhaps even to India? Or was it destined to fail from the beginning? The Battle of Carrhae was more than a military disaster, it was a warning that Rome was not invincible. But was this warning truly understood? Or would Rome continue to challenge the Parthians, making the same mistakes? What did this battle really mean for the future of both civilizations? Perhaps the answer lies in the sands of the desert, where thousands of legionaries fell without ever returning home. The Romans could not forget the humiliation at Carrhae. The loss of the legionary eagles and the death of Crassus remained an open wound in the pride of Rome. Therefore, Mark Antony, one of the most ambitious generals of his time, saw the Parthians as an opportunity for redemption. In 36 BC, Mark Antony led a massive campaign against the Parthian Empire, bringing about 100,000 men to the east. But was Rome prepared to face an enemy that mastered the arts of asymmetric warfare? The Parthians did not wait for a direct confrontation. They knew that the Romans depended on constant supplies and used the desert itself as a weapon. Lightning attacks, ambushes, and the destruction of supply routes began to weaken Mark Antony's legions. The Roman army, far from its base, began to suffer from hunger and thirst. Each advance meant irreparable losses. But the greatest surprise was yet to come. In one of the battles, the Parthians captured Mark Antony's supply wagons, including siege equipment and food. The Roman general, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to retreat. But how could one retreat in the face of an enemy that attacked without warning, disappearing into the desert? The withdrawal was a true massacre. Of the 100,000 soldiers, more than half never returned to Rome. Once again, the Parthians had proven they could withstand the greatest power in the world. Meanwhile, the Parthians faced internal strife. The Parthian Empire, which had resisted Roman legions for centuries, now faced an invisible enemy, distrust among its own leaders. Meanwhile, Rome was strengthening. Under Augustus's rule, the legionary eagles captured at Carrhae were finally recovered through diplomacy, without the need for a new war. It was a tremendous symbolic blow. The Romans could claim they had restored their honor, while the Parthians continued to weaken in internal conflicts. The war was no longer fought on the battlefield, but in the shadows of power. In the following centuries, Rome continued to challenge the Parthians. Trajan, in the early 2nd century AD, even invaded Mesopotamia and took the Parthian capital, Ctesiphon. But the Roman conquest was brief. The Parthians, even weakened, still knew how to wear down their enemies. In less than a year, the Romans were forced to retreat. The war between Rome and Parthia was a game of endurance, and the Parthians still had cards to play. But the internal fissures of the Parthian Empire became increasingly visible. The Parthian rulers, once fierce warriors, began to rely on unstable alliances with neighboring tribes. Each succession crisis weakened the structure of the empire. When a ruler ascended to the throne, there was already a new conspiracy to overthrow him. Rome merely watched, waiting for the right moment to deliver the final blow. That moment arrived in the 3rd century AD. The Sassanids, a new Persian dynasty, emerged from the shadows and challenged Parthian control. Led by Ardashir I, the Sassanids presented themselves as the true heirs of the ancient Persians, rejecting the Hellenistic influence that the Parthians had absorbed. While the Parthians fought among themselves, the Sassanids grew in strength, preparing to seize power. The final blow came when the Sassanids defeated Artabanus IV, the last Parthian king, in a decisive battle. In a few years, the Parthian Empire, which had challenged Rome for centuries, disappeared from history. But was its fall merely the result of the rise of the Sassanids? Or had Rome finally won its silent war, destroying the Parthians without shedding more blood? The Sassanid Empire became Rome's new enemy, but this was a different war. The Sassanids had a more centralized structure, a well-organized army, and a clear goal: to restore Persian greatness. The Romans realized that this new empire would not be as vulnerable to internal manipulations as the Parthians. The game had changed. The fall of the Parthians teaches a valuable lesson: not always does an empire fall at the hands of an external enemy. Often, its destruction begins from within, in intrigues, betrayals, and the corruption of power. Rome did not destroy the Parthians with its legions, but rather with patience and strategy. Could this have been Rome's greatest victory? But if Rome managed to bring down the Parthians without a direct confrontation, why did it not use the same strategy against other enemies? Or was the fate of the Romans themselves already sealed? The story of the Parthian Empire is a silent warning that every great civilization carries within itself the seeds of its own destruction. The Parthian Empire, which had resisted Rome for centuries, now faced an even more dangerous enemy: internal disunity. Weak rulers, incessant betrayals, and devastating civil wars had ravaged the empire, leaving it vulnerable to external threats. But were the Sassanids, emerging as a new force in Persia, merely an ambitious group taking advantage of Parthian weakness? Or had they received secret support to overthrow the Arsacid dynasty? The crisis within the Parthian Empire began to deepen in the 2nd century AD. Disputes over the throne became frequent, and each new rise to power was marked by assassinations and revolts. While Rome watched from afar, the Sassanids, an emerging Persian dynasty, began to consolidate power in the province of Persis, the heart of the ancient Achaemenid Empire. But how did a peripheral group manage to defeat an empire that had challenged the Romans for centuries? Ardashir I, leader of the Sassanids, not only rebelled against the Parthians, he claimed to be the legitimate heir of the Persian kings of the past. His rhetoric gained traction among the discontented nobility and among cities that viewed the Parthian dynasty as an unstable and decaying government. But was Ardashir really a legitimate heir, or was this part of a larger strategy to destabilize the Parthian Empire? The war between the Parthians and Sassanids was not swift. The Parthians tried to resist, but they were weakened by decades of internal strife. When Ardashir directly challenged Artabanus IV, the last great Parthian king, the fate of the empire was sealed. The final confrontation occurred in 224 AD, and Artabanus was defeated and killed in battle. But his death was merely the official end of something that had been doomed for years. Rome, which had long sought to subjugate the Parthians, watched the fall of its greatest rival. The Roman strategy of fostering internal instability had succeeded. But did Rome benefit from the Parthian fall? Or would the rise of the Sassanids create an even more formidable enemy? The Sassanids not only destroyed the Parthians but also rejected their Hellenistic influence. Unlike the Parthians, who blended Persian and Greek traditions, the Sassanids sought to restore the glory of the ancient Persians. They reorganized the government, created a powerful army, and made Zoroastrianism a fundamental part of the state. The Parthians fell not only militarily but also culturally, being erased by the new Sassanid order. What intrigues historians the most is the speed with which the Sassanids consolidated power. In just a few years, they took control of territories that the Parthians had taken centuries to maintain. This raises the question whether Sassanids already infiltrated in the Parthian government before its fall. Did Ardashir I rely on secret allies within the Parthian aristocracy itself? Another obscure point is the role of the nomadic tribes of the East, which had historically been allies of the Parthians. During the civil war, these tribes simply did not intervene. Were they bought off by the Sassanids? Or did they realize that the Parthian Empire was doomed and decided not to waste resources fighting for a kingdom already defeated? The Sassanid Empire took on the grandeur that once belonged to the Parthians. Ctesiphon, the capital of the Parthians, became the seat of the new empire. Trade routes, fortresses, and even some military elements were absorbed by the Sassanids. But were the Parthians truly destroyed, or did they become part of this new empire in a veiled manner? Interestingly, some Parthian noble families continued to hold important positions within the Sassanid Empire. They accepted the new dynasty, but did they do so out of loyalty or merely to survive? Could this have been the true final blow against Parthian identity, not a defeat on the battlefield, but the silent dissolution of their nobility within the new regime? If the Parthians had not divided, would they still have resisted? Rome, despite its strength, never managed to completely conquer Parthia. But the Sassanids, with a more rigid government structure and a more defined identity, achieved in a few years what Rome could not in centuries. The fall of the Parthians shows that the greatest enemy of an empire is not a foreign army, but internal decay. The Sassanids did not need to destroy the Parthians had already done that themselves. Civil war, betrayals, and instability made Sassanid victory inevitable. But one mystery remains: did the Sassanids truly emerge from nothing, or was their rise carefully orchestrated? Was Ardashir merely an opportunistic leader, or a conspirator who planned every step of this transition? Was the fall of Parthia an unexpected disaster or a meticulously crafted coup by those who patiently waited for the right moment to seize power? Rome may have watched the destruction of the Parthians with satisfaction, but it did not take long to realize that it had created a new enemy. The Sassanids not only inherited Parthian territory but also their hatred for Rome. And thus, a new chapter in the war between the West and the East began. Before we move on to the next topic, I noticed that you haven't liked this video yet. This is super important as it helps YouTube promote our content to more people, allowing us to continue bringing you more information to help you. So, don't waste time, leave your like here, it's free and makes all the difference. Thanks. The Parthians were not just a bothersome enemy for Rome, they were proof that the greatest empire of the West was not invincible. For centuries, Rome struggled to subjugate the civilizations around it, but it never fully managed to conquer Parthia. How did an empire that began with nomadic tribes manage to withstand the Roman war machine for so long? Was it merely superior military strategy, or was there something more, something that history itself tried to erase? The silence of Roman historians about the Parthians is, at the very least, suspicious. While the feats of generals like Julius Caesar, Augustus, and Trajan are celebrated, the Romans rarely spoke of their humiliating defeats against the Parthians. The Battle of Carrhae was a disaster that marked Rome forever, but why are so few records detailing the true impact of this event? Did Rome deliberately try to minimize its own shame? The Parthians were masters of war tactics that Rome never managed to imitate. Their army employed a unique strategy, mounted archers who could shoot arrows with precision while retreating, the famous Parthian shot. This method not only annihilated Roman legions in several battles but also became a symbol of Parthian military superiority. But how did they develop such an advanced technique? Did they draw inspiration from even older tactics, from forgotten empires? Another intriguing mystery is the disappearance of the legionary eagles captured by the Parthians. When Crassus was defeated, the Parthians took the sacred insignia of the Roman legions, something considered an unacceptable humiliation for Rome. For years, the Romans tried to recover them, but only a few were returned decades later. What happened to the others? Were they hidden as trophies or used for some darker purpose within the Parthian Empire itself? The Parthians also left an impressive cultural legacy. They were one of the first empires to allow a significant degree of autonomy for conquered peoples, adopting a decentralized model of governance. Their cities were prosperous and cosmopolitan, blending Greek, Persian, and even Indian influences. But why have so few architectural remnants and Parthian writings survived to this day? Was there a deliberate attempt to erase their memory from history? The influence of the Parthians over the Sassanids is also a point of debate. Although the Sassanids replaced the Parthians, many elements of governance, culture, and even military strategy remained. Could it be that the Parthians never completely disappeared, but rather infiltrated the new empire under a new identity? Did they continue to influence the course of Persia from the shadows? Another intriguing detail is Parthian trade. They controlled one of the most strategic routes in the world, the Silk Road. This dominance gave them access to wealth and information from China, India, and the Middle East. Rome depended on this route for exotic goods, but the Parthians were always an obstacle. Did Rome attempt to destroy them not only for military reasons but also for economic ones? Furthermore, there are indications that the Parthians had advanced knowledge of politics and diplomacy. Unlike other enemies of Rome, they did not seek the total destruction of the rival empire, but rather a balance of power. Even after devastating battles, the Parthians always preferred agreements and treaties over prolonged occupations. But why this differentiated approach? Was it a strategy to ensure their survival, or did they follow some hidden code of war? Records about the last Parthian kings are also nebulous. What really happened in the final years of the Arsacid dynasty? Was it merely a succession of internal betrayals, or was there an external conspiracy that precipitated their fall? The speed with which the Sassanids took power raises suspicions that something more was at play. What did Rome really know about the Parthians, and why such effort to erase them from history? If they were merely a common enemy, why are there no more detailed accounts of their strategies, motivations, and culture? Is it possible that there are documents hidden in Roman archives that reveal inconvenient truths about the Parthian Empire? And if the Parthians had discovered military secrets that could have changed the fate of Rome? Some theories suggest that the Parthians developed revolutionary warfare techniques for their time, but that were lost with their fall. Could some secret knowledge have been intentionally destroyed by the Romans to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands? The truth is that the Parthians were never truly defeated on the battlefield. They fell due to internal disputes and the rise of a new Persian power. But what if this fall was not as spontaneous as it seems? What if their destruction was carefully planned by forces that saw the Parthians as an obstacle to a larger project? the Parthian legacy remains alive in various aspects of the modern world. From military tactics to concepts of decentralized governance, their influence can be seen in unexpected places. However, the question remains, why was their name deliberately obscured in official history? Who had an interest in ensuring that the Parthians were forgotten? What else has history not told you about the Parthians? If you want to know the truth, stay with me and prepare to uncover the hidden mysteries of this forgotten empire. The Parthian Empire was not just an enemy of Rome, it was the only power that challenged it for centuries and survived. But why was its history erased from the records? How could such a powerful empire fall without leaving clear traces? Was it merely fate, or was there something darker behind the scenes of this silent war? The Romans feared the Parthians not only for their military strength, but for what they represented, a system of warfare, diplomacy, and resistance that Rome could never dominate. But what if Rome did something to ensure that the Parthians were forgotten? What if there were secrets buried in the dust of history that were never revealed? The rise and fall of the Parthians was not just a chapter of antiquity, it was a power play where betrayals, conspiracies, and hidden battles decided the fate of empires. But has the true story been told? Or are there still pieces of this puzzle waiting to be discovered? Rome won, but at what cost? What else was hidden about this forgotten empire? Now that you know the truth, is everything we know about history really what happened? The answer may be much closer than we imagine. But only those who dare to question the past can see beyond the smoke screen that official history imposes on us. The question remains, are you ready to discover what else may be hidden? Stay tuned, for there will always be battles to be fought, and how you face them may define your own empire. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and continue learning from history. Until the next video.